So, I ended up rewatching The Matrix a few days ago, since it was on Netflix, and since apparently I've been tired of the real world being awful and wanted to imagine that we're all just living in a simulation and being laughed at by super intelligent robots. And it turns out that I have quite a lot to say about this movie. I've been wanting to start a series like this for a while now, checking out classic films and pointing out why they might be worth revisiting or why they might be a little overhyped, and this seemed like a good place to start. So yeah, I'm not going to bore you with any more intro stuff, let's just get into what I really liked about this movie. And right off the bat, I have to bring up the premise, especially how it's handled in the first act. The Matrix is well known for introducing quite a few things to pop culture, like slow-mo action, the red pill and blue pill, a couple of classic memes, and I'm sure a few other things that I can't name off the top of my head. But all these things are blown out of the water by the film's core concept, the idea that the reality that we know is just a computer simulation. It's an idea that continues to be taken seriously by scientists and philosophers to this day, so I have to give major credit to the Wachowskis for introducing it to a pop culture audience. And almost as importantly, it's introduced very well. All the scenes of Neo discovering hints about the Matrix, learning from Morpheus, going through the training programs, and discovering the real world are pretty fantastic. The technical parts of the film's universe are also explored quite well for a single film. Not only do they contribute to the story in really interesting ways, like the talk of glitches in the Matrix and the awesome scene where Neo learns Kung Fu, but it also lends itself to some actual philosophical discussion.
This isn't real.
What is real? How do you define real? If you're talking about what you can feel, what you can smell, what you can taste and see, then real is simply electrical signals interpreted by your brain.
It's still pretty basic philosophy, but it's a cut above most action movies, which won't go any deeper than being evil is bad. So yeah, The Matrix itself, really good stuff. The other major positive that I can give this movie is the visuals and action scenes. This movie has a very unique look that's instantly memorable. If this movie were trying to be a more cerebral experience, focusing on the theme of a person waking up and realizing that the universe they know is a computer program, it might have been a little bit more powerful if the Matrix were more mundane, rather than the green-tinted cyberpunk aesthetic that they went for. But the movie that the Wachowskis did decide to make is an action movie, first and foremost, and the trenchcoats and martial arts just make the action sequences that much cooler. Besides that, the action sequences are just super well done from a screenwriting and cinematography perspective, with fluid camera work and stylized but immersive choreography. As soon as a chase or fight scene begins, it remains incredibly engrossing and dynamic, with the heroes moving from place to place, but never in a way that feels disjointed or loses track of the characters for even a second. This is true even for the action sequences that don't involve actual fighting, like the early scene when Neo tries to escape the office, which is one of the best parts of the movie if you ask me. And when it does get to kung fu and bullet dodging, that's mostly really cool as well, although the slow-mo does get a little old, but that's probably because I've seen it in so many other movies that were inspired by this one. The machine-ruled real world looks pretty amazing as well, from Morpheus' ship to the battery pods, though with one exception, the robots themselves look pretty bad and just scream 90s CGI. And with that, I guess I've found an excuse to get into the negative, so I hope you enjoyed me being nice to this movie, because that will be gone for the next several minutes. Alright, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. The acting in The Matrix is bad. Really bad by Hollywood blockbuster standards. Pretty much everyone is either overdramatic, stiff, or both. And I could forgive cheesy performances if this movie was going for a more tongue-in-cheek vibe, like Guardians of the Galaxy, or even Indiana Jones, but this movie is clearly trying to take itself seriously. I don't remember a single joke in the entire runtime. So when every single character acts like a stoner, a robot, or a stoned robot, the emotional scenes just do not resonate. I can forgive Hugo Weaving the most because his character is an actual robot, but even he is downright laughable at points.
I need the codes. I have to get inside Zion. And you have to tell me how. You're going to tell me, or you're going to die.
Lawrence Fishburne as Morpheus is admittedly pretty fun to watch, but he's so overdramatic that I don't get the feeling that I'm watching a real person when he's giving his monologues and such. Carrie-Anne Moss as Trinity is just the definition of bland and forgettable. Most of the bystanders just look ridiculous, and Keanu... oh boy, Keanu. He pulls off the stoic badass thing decently, but that's probably just because he doesn't know how to convey the emotions that he's trying to. And before he becomes a badass, he sort of just looks like he doesn't care about anything, which makes his character look even blander than it actually is. This brings me into my next point. One of the major driving forces of this movie is Neo's character arc, and Neo's character arc is kind of garbage. It starts off with some promise. He's a disgruntled programmer living as a hacker by night who receives some cryptic information about a secret world, is chased down by a bad guy, and meets up with a group of rebels who offer him the truth if he's willing to give up his safety. It's solid stuff, even though it's almost precisely the beginning of the Campbellian hero's journey, which we've seen countless times before. But that's okay, because with this intro, the fairly blank Neo can now undergo the meaningful emotional development of absolutely nothing. There is no meaningful character development. Neo technically becomes much more of a badass and eventually saves everyone, but that's mostly because he has the knowledge of Kung Fu literally uploaded to his brain. Okay, so this movie doesn't have much in the way of personal development for the main character. That's still fine, as long as it can make up for it with plot development, but there's still a gaping hole there. Basically, the overarching plot of this movie reveals itself about halfway through, and it's basically that Neo is the chosen one minus Chosen, and that he and the gang are being hunted down by Agent Smith. And this movie honestly has one of the blandest takes on the Chosen One that I've ever seen. Which is saying a lot, because that trope had been used frequently since classical mythology, and was definitely overused in 1999 when this movie was released. But like pretty much all overused tropes, it can still be great if you do something unique with it, and it can at least be fine if you develop it properly. Say what you want about something like Harry Potter, which became popular at around the same time, but at least Harry had some level of depth, and sort of a reason for being chosen. His parents sacrificed themselves to save him from Voldemort, so it makes sense that he's the one who's destined to defeat them. This rando with zero personality has no reason to be the one, from both a logical standpoint and from a karmic destiny says you deserve this standpoint. Another important point, Harry Potter is fantasy. It can get away with having a vague mystical prophecy that justifies why the hero is special because the whole world seems mystical and unexplainable. Meanwhile, The Matrix, a science fiction film, is supposed to illustrate a real-world future that seems at least somewhat believable, and having something blatantly unbelievable like this really takes me out of that world. Okay, so Neo is basically able to rewrite the code of the Matrix at will. That's a pretty cool way to insert otherwise magical abilities into a sci-fi world, but how and why is he the only one able to do this? Did some human rebel hack into the code? Is it a massive glitch in the programming? Did the robots intentionally write it in to give the humans a chance to escape? Did God himself come down from heaven and alter the code of the Matrix so that Neo could help humanity escape its bonds? This question is left wide open. And, to be honest, I would probably say that the fourth one is the Wachowskis' most likely intent. And this isn't very reassuring, because it is the exact definition of Deus Ex Machina. God himself interfering to let this contrived plot unfold. Come to think of it, there are a decent number of biblical motifs in this movie, with the last human city being called Zion, and one of the main characters being named Trinity and such. But I would have much preferred it if this very humanistic conflict had a much more humanistic solution that didn't involve a magical chosen one saving everything. There are plenty of ways to make Neo special without making him Cyber Jesus. Maybe he could have stumbled upon some code that can be used to protect people from the agent's powers, or maybe he could have discovered the lost location of Zion or something. Neo is supposed to be an experienced hacker from the beginning of the movie, but it's very easy to forget this, since he's so amazed by Matrix technology that it makes him look like he's never even seen a computer before.
Whoa.
Slight exaggeration maybe, but Keanu's acting does not help. And while this does make sense given how much more advanced the real world is, it does end up making Neo's character traits even less pronounced since he never actually uses his hacking skills. And I only mention this because there isn't much else to focus on. The hero's journey, which is supposed to be the centerpiece, is so conventional that it's almost surprising in and of itself. An ordinary guy who finds out he's destined to save the world, learns how to fight, struggles with his belief in responsibility, and magically obliterates the bad guy is initially a great concept, but it's been done so many times that it's no longer impressive or even engaging unless you make some pretty significant changes. And The Matrix does not make those changes. Alright, I'm done ranting about The Chosen One, now let's get back to my core question, the title of the video. Is The Matrix as good as you remember? Well, it really depends on how you remember it, and to be honest, the answer has a good chance of being yes. I know that might sound a little surprising given how critical I was of the acting in the hero's journey, but I don't think The Matrix is a bad movie by any means. At least half the film is dedicated to action scenes and discovering the digital reality, and both of those things are done exceptionally well. If you remember The Matrix primarily as a fun 90s action romp with a cool setting, it'll probably be just as good as you remembered, with just a few cheesy moments of overused slow-mo and bad acting. But if you remembered it as some masterpiece of cinema with a profound commentary on our understanding of reality, then you'll probably be a little disappointed. As for myself, I was somewhere in between those two extremes. I was exposed to the movie at a very impressionable age, maybe 13 or 14, and I remember being blown away by both the special effects and the core concept. And now that I've seen it when I'm a little older, I still had plenty of fun, even ironically a few times, but I sort of wish that such an amazing concept wasn't used for such a conventional story. But luckily, this concept has plenty more room for exploration in stories. So yeah, thanks for watching the video. Let me know what you think of The Matrix in the comments if you'd like, and be sure to hit the like button if you want this to become a series. See y'all later! And also let me know if you want me to check out these things too, although if what I've heard about them from my friends is true, it'll probably involve me getting pretty mad again.